Let's make a stitch pattern on the knitting loom. Today we're working bobble stitches. I'm actually going to show you 4 different bobble stitches. So if you have loom knit, you probably made this little bitty one here. Now it can appear small if you're working on a smaller weight yarn, or you can get one larger, as in this little pattern here, depending upon your yarn. So I've got this is actually a bulky yarn, and then this is a super bulky 6-weight yarn here. So this same bobble technique is used on these 3 samples, including this small one right here. But did you know you can make bigger ones on the loom? These look just like the ones that I showed in my previous needle knitting video. We're going to work on all 4 of these bobbles on the knitting loom today. Welcome to GoodKnitKisses. We're all about helping you stitch your love and love your stitches. To get the written pattern on all 4 of these bobble types, please see the link down below in the video description for our blog. And we also have a link to the patterns for a 7x9 or 9x7 for Warm Up America blankets, as well as a larger 12x12 with this nice stockinette field and bobbles. Now the bobbles, you can choose different bobbles that I'm going to demonstrate, but when it says Make Bobble, you have a choice. This is just a design that you can use, and to stick with our Stitching Along series. So I am working with a medium or 4 worsted weight yarn and a small gauge loom. You can try different ones, but I suggest for learning purposes that you stick with this smaller gauge so that your bobbles are similar to these, and then you may need to adapt them for those larger yarns. You may need less rows or whatever. The first quick tip is this bobble, this very first one, is actually made like the one we're going to make here in a minute. And it actually has 2 less rows than this one in order to get it, because it already bulks up so fast. So we'll go over that in a minute, but I just wanted to cover those bulkier yarns in case someone had a question. Now, if you need a right or left-handed tutorial, please click that down in the video description below and you can get that. All right, let's dive in. You're going to want to go ahead and cast on. So I've cast it on from here to here, and then I've worked actually about 7 rows in stockinette. So I just used a U-wrap knit stitch, okay? U-wrap around, knit over, and continued until I had several rows for my little sample. So cast it on, 11, work several rows, and then meet me back up when you are over here, and then knit to 5 stitches. So I'm going to begin right here. So go ahead and do that. Pause your video and I will meet you back up in just a moment. The 4 basic bobbles are going to be covered in timestamps down below, but I'll just give you the names real quick. This very first one that you're probably most familiar, if you've done a bobble on the loom before, is just the simple loom bobble or a basic loom bobble. The next one I'm going to show is the leaning 4-stitch bobble, and it kind of leans and it has almost a teardrop shape to it. It's bulkier at the bottom. The next one is the 5-stitch centered 5-stitch, and it's just more rounded. It has a nice central decrease on it, and it's just nice and evenly worked. The next one is the quick increase bobble, and it actually increases in width. So it goes from 3 stitches and doubles it to 6, and then it decreases very quickly. And that's these 3 that are different from the main one. So we're going to cover this one first, jump to the timestamp that you like, and we'll begin. The simple loom knit bobble, you're going to work all the way up until the stitch that you want to make it on. So in this case, I've got 11 across. I'm working to the middle one, so I'm going to be working on the 6th stitch here. And you can work regular knit stitches, you can E-wrap, whatever you like or whatever your pattern calls for. But this particular one, we're going to be E-wrapping this stitch here. So even if you have U-wrap knit here, it's fine. So we're just going to simply E-wraps. You're coming behind the peg, going all the way around the front and knitting over. And then we're going to repeat that 4 more times. So we're going to do it a total of 5 times. It makes 5 short rows. So this is 2, 3, 4, and 5. If you have a bulkier yarn, sometimes you only need about 3 of these rows. So once you've gotten the length of it, let's go look at the back. Okay, So you're just going to kind of, I like to pull it to the side so I can really see the first stitch that began. And if you pull it back, you can see this little short panel, flat panel that was created. I'm going to push it back down. But we're going to go to the very bottom stitch that began it all. And we're just going to lift it up. It's just a purl. Okay, so we're just going to the back of the loom and placing that on our peg. Okay, and then you're simply just going to knit over. Okay, so knit that over and then continue on. That's it. So I just tighten it up and continue on my row. And that makes this one here. So it has a bit of a loop to it. If you put your hook in there, you can actually see through it here, right? So if you make it really long, it's going to have this outward loop that you could even stick a finger through, which in certain cases you do not want to have that. In some you might. So anyway, that's what that looks like. You can make it 3 if you like, or even 4, but you just continue working on in your pattern until you need another bobble and repeat that again. All right, so continue making a few more rows and then join me back up. I'll show you the next bobble. All right, we're going to work on the leaning 4-stitch bobble. It's this one right here. It leans a little bit this way because of the decrease, and the increase goes from 1 to 4 stitches, so it kind of goes out really wide very quickly, and then we work a few rows and then make this decrease that leans, so it has a bit of a teardrop shape like that. So go ahead and work up to your center stitch. I've got 5 stitches worked in U-wrap knit, and now we're going to work 4 stitches into this 1 stitch here. So I'm going to pull through several loops and set them on either side on top of these other stitches, and we're not going to touch those other stitches until we get our bobble completely made, and then we'll go back to 1 and then continue on. So just remember that not working all of those stitches over on the bobble ones. So go ahead and take your yarn and your working yarn and put it over your stitch, and we're going to go up from underneath the existing loop and pull downward to make a nice long loop. Okay, you need a lot of slack just to either hold on to it or just keep it out of the way from pulling all the way back up. We're going to work another stitch in here and set these loops over to the side. So now we need to put our working yarn below this stitch that's still on this peg. So kind of hold on to it with my thumb here, and then I just kind of trap this other loop from going anywhere with my thumb as well. I'm going to take my tool and come underneath, and then I like to kind of wrap it around this working yarn and kind of pull on it and get it up into this groove of the peg and then pull up. So come around here, make sure you're grabbing all of it. Okay, so I can even hold on to it with this other hand. I was trying to do it with just my thumb, but what I normally do is I hold it with one finger, and then I'm going to hold on to with my working yarn with my thumb over here, put my tool here, and then pull up a loop like this. Okay, see, now I have 2 of them look like bunny ears. If you've seen me do the Trinity stitch, this is very similar. So now we're going to take these 2 loops and place them on the 2 previous pegs. So I'm going to go around behind them and place it on this peg here, and then pull on this loop here to pull the slack. Okay, so tighten that up, and then now I can take this other loop and bring it to the back of my next peg and place it on. And if I put my finger on top of this peg, I can just pull on the working yarn and it won't pop off, and then I can tug on that. Now we still have this loop on the peg, this old stitch, and now we want to knit and pull down another loop. So we put the yarn above that loop and then bring our tool up here, and I like to kind of hold it so I can play with it with my other hand and bring it to the back of my tool, and then I'm just going to pull a loop down like that. Okay, so go insert, pull down the loop, make that loop, hold it with one finger, and then now we're going to put the yarn down again and repeat. So I'm going to put my tool in and bring a loop up, and we got another set of bunny ears. So you're doing 2 bunny ears. You're doing knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1 into the same stitch. That's all you're doing. So now we need to put these loops on your current peg and the next peg. So I just like to go ahead and hold on to these and pull this old peg off, this old loop. So just boop, pull it off, bring my working yarn to the back, and now I'm going to set aside this last loop on this one here. Go ahead and tighten it up, okay? And then now we're going to place this stitch on our 6th peg, and we need to tighten it up. So now I can pull on this last one here, and it tightens up that stitch, and now we can tighten this one. Okay, so now we have 4 stitches across. I like to go ahead and one more time tighten up all of my loops just to be sure. Okay, I want to pull up all the slack, or else you're going to have a hole in the bottom of your bobble. All right, so now we want to work these stitches across in a row. We're going to knit all the way across. Remember, don't work the very bottom stitch if you've got 2 stitches on a peg. So that's 2, we knit 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, so that's 1 row, and now we want to turn and go the other direction. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Knit another row. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and knit 1 more row. So we're doing 4 rows. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so we got 4 rows. Our working yarn is on our very last peg in the direction that you're knitting towards. We're going to call that peg 4. Okay, so now we're going to place peg 2 on peg 1 and knit over. Okay, knit off, knit over. Okay, now we're going to pick that peg up and move it over, or that stitch, and move it over to the previous peg. All right, now we're going to pick up what would be peg number 3 and move it on peg 2 and knit over, and pick that up and move it over here. And then we're going to pick up peg 4 and move it on to peg 3 and knit over. And so now you should have everything onto this center peg where we began, and you have now decreased down to 1 stitch again, and you're ready to continue on. So you'll notice that you have a bulk of a bobble in the back here. You won't be able to do anything with it to push it towards the front to bubble out until you have knit a few rows. So go ahead and knit to the end of your row, and then work. Go ahead and work about 5 more rows to get to the next bobble, but I want to show you what to do with it after you've knit to that point. So go ahead and knit the next stitch nice and tight. The rest of them you can knit as normal, and then work your way back for a few more rows of knit stitches. I'm going to do about 5 rows total. All right, pause your video and I'll see you in a moment. I've worked 5 more rows on my leaning 4-stitch bobble here, and if I pull this back, you can see it's not sticking out to the front yet, but you can see it's very clearly in the back, or the wrong side. So what I want to do is put my finger here, and we're going to just push it to the front. So I'm going to put my finger here and just push it in like that. Okay, so now we have created our bobble. You'll be able to see it once you've knit down down several more rows, but have no fear. As long as you poke it back out, you're good to go. And you can do that afterward too. I just like to go ahead and do it while I'm working on it. If you are working on a project and you needed to have done this from the other direction, just look at our other handed videos. So I'm working this as a right-handed video, and then my left-handed video will just show it coming from the other direction. So if you need help, just go click on that video link down in the description below, and you can jump to that tutorial to help you. I know sometimes you have to just see it from the other direction. All right, go ahead and work to your middle stitch again, and we'll work on the next bobble. We'll see you in a second. Okay, so we're now ready to do the centered 5-stitch bobble, which is this one. It is nice and rounded. It has a centered decrease, and it has one more stitch than the previous one. It has one more row, so it's 5 stitches across that it gets increased to and works 5 rows, and then it has a centered decrease. So the significant part is the extra stitch, the extra row, and the different decrease versus the 4-stitch, the leaning 4-stitch one that we did before. I will go a little bit slower in the leaning 4-stitch, so if you need to see that video, go ahead. And now let's jump into this one. It's a great way to make a bulkier bobble on a smaller weight yarn. So this is really great for worsted or smaller weight yarn in smaller gauge looms. All right, so work up until the stitch that you need the bobble. Here we're doing it on peg 6. So we're going to put our yarn above, and we're going to pull down for a knit 1 and make a little bunny ear, okay? And then we're going to hold on to that, put our yarn down below for a purl, and pull up and make our second bunny ear, okay? And then we're going to put them on these 2 previous pegs. So I'm going to pull on that one, make sure that stitch is above the other one, and we're going to be ignoring our old stitches and not working them this time. Now let's place this other loop over here and go ahead and get that slack out, and we'll tighten these up later on. We're going to add in more stitches. So we did a knit 1, purl 1. Now we need to do a knit 1. So we're going to place the yarn up above this stitch and pull down for a knit, and then hold on to it and put the yarn below and pull up for a loop for a purl. There we go. All right, now I'm going to hold on to these like this, and I'm going to do one more because I need to get that last knit stitch in here. So we have a knit 1, purl 1, and then we need to do a knit 1. So we put it above and put our hook in here and pull down, and then we have 3 loops. Okay, we can actually remove this old loop now, put our yarn to the back, kind of get it out of the way, and then put our loops on here. It's easy to take the last one and go ahead and move it over 3 stitches over. So we have this one we're working with, so that's 1, 2, 3. So on the 3rd stitch, put it on there, go ahead and tighten it up. You'll be able to tighten up these ones here in a second. And then you can pull these apart, make sure you have them in the right order, and just kind of stare at them for a moment. And then I'm going to place it on this empty peg, this first one here, which is actually your middle stitch of 5. And then just find the yarn that's going to tighten it up. There we go. We tighten that up, and now we have this last one. Place it on here and tighten. I'm just going to pull on this very last stitch that we made. You have to kind of tug it a little bit. Don't break your yarn, but tug it. All right, now that I've got them all on there, we want to make sure they're all snug. So I'm going to start at the beginning and just pull out any slack that you can. And I'm kind of holding it at the back with my finger to make sure it doesn't slip off. There we go. All right, so again, we're going to be working 5 rows on this one. Only work these top stitches and then this singular stitch here in the middle. So work back and forth 5 rows, pause your video, and I'll meet you back. The yarn will be on the opposite side. We'll see you in a moment. Okay, so we're going to do a centered decrease, and you can use this. Let's say you went all the way to 7 pegs if you did that on an experimenting one, or even with 3. You know, if you had 3 wide. So the yarn is going to be over on this right side. Well, on my video, it's over on this side over here. It's in the opposite direction of how you're knitting, because we're going in this direction. So it's going to be over here. We've knit 5 rows, and now we're going to concentrate on this center stitch here. So we're going to place peg, we're going to call this peg 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So peg 4 is going to go onto peg 3 and knit over. Okay, and then now we want to place peg 2 on peg 3 and knit over, right? And now we want to take peg 5 and put it on peg 3, knit over, and you guessed it, peg 1 onto peg 3 and knit over. And you can't see, I'm actually pulling on this if you saw that get tighter. So knit over and then tighten up. And now you're ready to complete the rest of your row or go to your next bobble. So you want to knit that till the end. Okay. When you're doing your return row, I failed to mention this in the last video, but it is good to knit the stitch next to the bobble from here to here. So your bobble's here. You want to make sure this is nice and tight on your row back so that you don't have any holes there, because this is going to be the loosest part on your bobble. Okay, so go ahead and knit about 5 more rows, and then meet me back up and I'll show you this part. We're going to poke that through to the other side. See you in a minute. All right, let's wrap this up. So I'm going to pull my, let's look at the back. So I've finished and my bobble is at the back. It needs to be in the front. So we're just going to poke it through to the other side. Boop. And you can see that, and you can see how it is now centered in the middle, and it looks really different from this one. So you can see how this one's really leaning and then this one's rounded. So go ahead and if you're not to that length yet, go ahead and get ready for your next bobble, and we'll begin work up to that bobble stitch, and we'll see you in a moment for the last one, which is the quick increase. See you soon. Now let's work on the quick increase bobble, which is this one. Now this one looks really smooth and round and even, but I will tell you, when you work this one, if you're not consistent and you do it really fast, let me show you my sample over here. So you'll notice these look really cute like this, but when we kind of get closer up, they all are slightly different, which I think kind of gives it this cool little nubby texture, but some are a little bit more rounded than others. Some might have a looser piece than others. So that's why it's really important to be consistent and tighten up when you increase, tighten up those extra stitches, and then we do the second increase again, making sure they're nice and tight, and then you can get a more rounded and smoothed bobble. And these definitely, you're going to have to go a few rows before you kind of pop them out, kind of like the other one over here. Okay, those other two that we did previous. So let's go ahead and start this one. We're going to work to our 6th stitch, or work to your bobble stitch, and we're going to knit 1, purl 1, knit 1 into the same stitch. So we're going to bring our yarn down from the top to make a knit stitch, hold that, bring our yarn forward and hold it underneath, and then we're going to purl and pull up a loop to make that little bunny ear. All right, and then we can go ahead and place this first one over here on this stitch to the right, or next to it. In my video, it's on the right. In the left-handed video, it'll be on the left. And so I want to go ahead and pull that tight. Makes my little ear kind of tight, but I can tighten up more here in just a second. All right, now I'm going to move this over here, and now we're going to put the yarn above and do the do the knit stitch. So we're knitting into it. So we're bringing a loop down, and now we have our other bunny ear, and we can pull off the old stitch. Okay, and then we're going to place this one, the middle one, onto the empty peg. So just pull on your yarn and get that tight, and then place this last one on this third stitch and tighten it up. Okay, this is where it's important to make sure that you've got all your stitches nice and tight. So I'm gonna make sure, see, this one is kind of loose, so we want to tug on the middle stitch, make sure we're really getting it tightened. Yeah, that's pretty good. And then go to the third one, tighten that up. All right, now we're going to work a row across. We're just going to knit all 3 stitches one time, just one row here. On our other bobbles, we did multiple rows. Now, you do have a choice. You could make this a 3-stitch wide, and you could make 3 rows and make a centered decrease if you like. And then it's nice and small as well, and it will be slightly wider than this one here and have that smoothness. So that'd be a good experiment for you. So you could test that and then do this other one again with this quick technique. All right, so we're going to increase now all of these stitches. So where you get 3, go from 3 to 6. So each stitch is going to get 1 increase on it. So we're going to put our working yarn above, and we're going to knit 1, purl 1, or it's actually a knit front, purl back is really what this is called, but we're just knitting 1, purling 1 to the same stitch. So I'm going to make my little bunny ear here. I'm going to go ahead and place it on this previous peg and tighten up. And now bring my working yarn below. Be sure we're only purling this top stitch here. Okay, get in there, not touch that bottom one. There we go. And then I'm going to purl. Okay, and now we can take off the old stitch and tighten up. This is your only chance to tighten these up now. Okay, and then now we're going to work these next 2 stitches. So you can do a couple of things here. You can move these first 2 stitches over further. You can move these stitches over further. I'm going to go ahead and move this last stitch back 1 so that when I make my next stitches, I'll have room. Okay, so in fact, let me go ahead and move these over now that I've tightened those up. Move this over. And this one over. Having this flexi loom is kind of nice for this one. All right, so now I'm going to knit 1, purl 1. This stitch here, there's a knit. I'm going to place it on my new empty peg, tighten that up, and now I can purl that same stitch and pull the old one off. So purl, pull the old one off, and tighten. All right. And then now we're going to knit 1, purl 1 on this one. Make sure we're bringing our yarn behind that empty peg. Knit, and then purl. Whoops. Okay. And pull the old one off and tighten. We have 6 stitches across. So your working yarn is over here. You can do the leaning one like I talked about before, where you just kind of bind them off all the way progressively over. But we're going to try and do a centered one, even though it doesn't have an odd number. So this is how you will make it centered. You're going to take, let's see, I'm looking at my instructions. We're going to take peg 4 onto peg 3. And then we're going to knit over. Okay, then we're going to place 2 on peg 3. So our numbers are 1 starts over here. So we're going to do 2 onto peg 3 and knit over. And then we're going to place peg 5 on peg 3. And knit over. And now we're going to place peg 1 on peg 3 and knit over. And I'm going to go ahead and move this over to our empty peg here. See if I can tighten up at all and move peg 6 onto this peg 3 and knit over and tighten up. Okay, so now we have decreased everything, and this is the center decrease, and it's all center. It's all ready. Make sure you are tightening up on the next stitch and knit to the end. Okay. Now, if you are clever enough to, when you're doing your increases, and you can kind of remember which peg is supposed to go first or not, then you can, you know, maybe put some on top of each other. I do that, but it's a little confusing to show in the video. And so if I have requests for it, I will show how to do it. But honestly, I think this is the best visual to show you what is the process. So go ahead and work 5 more rows, and I will show you finishing this one off. All right, see you in a moment. Okay, so we've got the end of our quick knit one. I've actually knit about 7 rows because I'm going to bind this off and show you. But this is what it looks like before it's pushed outward. It looks like any belly button. And we're just going to push it out. And it seems kind of small on this one. And I have actually had to take my hook or my loom tool and put it kind of in this little part that sort of goes back a little bit and pull it with it. I don't want to pull individual strands, but I just kind of pull on the bobble, and then it just sort of lets it bloom out. It's a bobble bloom. See how it's a little bit more rounded. It does have a little slight hole back here. It really ends up hiding in your work. So my sample that I showed earlier, this one, if you pull on the bobbles, you know, you can see a little bit of it, but it really doesn't really show through when you're looking at your fabric that way. If you did have one that you just really messed up on, you think it looks fine from the front, you could always sort of weave in a tail here and cinch it in, but it's not necessary for most things. So I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial and it was helpful for you. Let me show you really quick what this looks like off the loom. Well, here is my final sample. I want you to see these from the side all together. You can really tell the difference. There's the simple one, then we have the leaning 4, and then we have the centered 5, and then we have our quick knit, which is like a 3-6-1. It goes from 3 to 6 and then back down to 1. So which one is your favorite? I would love to know. Please tell us down in the comments below. Have a great day and happy looming. We'll see you soon. Thanks for joining us today, where we help you stitch your love and love your stitches. See you again soon.